name is Emily. Welcome back to my channel. I am super excited to be here with all of you today. This is sort of my June 2021 Pride Month series. And this year I've sort of taken a little bit of a different approach. I'm just sort of talking about different topics related to the LGBTQIA+ community. And today I thought that we could talk a little bit about ways to, create a more inclusive environment at your school or your college campus, for example, for LGBTQIA+ individuals. So maybe ways you can create a more inclusive curriculum, a more inclusive classroom, which in general overall helps to improve the overall climate at your campus or at your school, whether it's a K-12 school or a university campus. And when thinking about this idea of improving climate, creating a more inclusive classroom, improving climate in general, not only benefits LGBTQIA+ students, for example, but it also has a lot of benefits for all students on the campus, for all students in the school. Studies have shown that when these more inclusive policies were implemented, or when classrooms became more inclusive, all students show better learning outcomes. All students show improved physical and mental health. It's not just the LGBTQIA+ students that benefit, even though they benefit greatly. It's not just the LGBTQIA+ students. And so I think that's something that's kind of important to think about. Not only is this good for, LGBTQIA+ students, but it's good for everyone. And that kind of makes sense, right? If you think about it, if you're creating a place where it's safe for everyone, no matter your identity or who you are, your people are going to feel more comfortable there. They're going to feel less stress. They're going to experience less emotional distress, which is going to sort of impact their learning, right? If the learning environment is better, it can help people to learn better, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And sometimes that can be a helpful thing to think about when maybe you have to introduce this idea of creating a more inclusive curriculum or creating a more inclusive classroom to, someone in your administration or someone at your school. Thinking about this idea that it benefits all students, not just LGBTQIA+ students. I think it's also important to think about, there are things you can do as a professor, as a teacher, in the classroom, and that's what we're going to be talking about mostly today. But it's also really important to have sort of overall institutional or administrative changes. Having explicit policies against bullying LGBTQIA+ students or against discriminating LGBTQIA+ students is actually one of the most important pieces of creating an inclusive campus. Having policies that benefit LGBTQIA+ students, having inclusive policies about names and pronouns, for example, and having policies that protect them explicitly is really important. Just sort of having generalized, anti-bullying policies doesn't go as far as having specific policies against bullying and discriminating LGBTQIA+ people. But we're not really here to sort of talk about those big administrative or overarching changes today. We're talking a little bit more about things you can do in the classroom to sort of improve the classroom environment, which sort of spreads out and helps to improve the overall campus or school community as well. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today was this idea of creating an inclusive curriculum, which, in a way is a lot of work, because maybe you have to, completely redo a curriculum that you've been, kind of working from for a couple of years. But I'd argue that you don't have to completely redo the curriculum, right? You're just sort of adding to it. The same way you would add to the curriculum because new information has come out, right? You're not going to be teaching the exact same thing every year in most situations. So I think that, the first thing you can do when you create an inclusive curriculum is to incorporate LGBTQIA+ content into the course materials, sort of overall, instead of just having a single class period about LGBTQIA+ related issues. So, instead of just having today is the day that we talk about LGBT+ people in science, you can just sort of work those different scientists into your overall curriculum throughout the semester, for example. Because I think sometimes if you relegate it to just one class period, it can make people feel like it's sort of a side issue, right? It's not really a part of what we're talking about. It's just kind of this thing over here. It's not that important. But if you incorporate it throughout the curriculum, it sort of makes it seem more normal, makes it seem more important. It sort of gives it its proper due, I guess. When you're creating your curriculum and when you're thinking about this content that you're going to be putting into the curriculum now, it's important to include positive representations of LGBTQIA+ individuals who have contributed to your field or to the course that you're teaching. So, looking for mathematicians who were LGBTQIA+, looking for scientists, for authors, or, looking for psychologists, for sociologists, for economists, for example. You can, talk about those people and include them in your discussions. You also can invite LGBTQIA+ individuals in your field to be guest speakers in your class, right? Have them come in and talk about their research and showcase their achievements and, show students that, LGBTQIA+ people are contributing to the field. They can do this. They can be successful. Provide those positive representations. And they also get to learn about, cool new, research or a cool new, thing that's being done in your field or in this class. You also can make sure that you include discussion of LGBTQIA+ issues in sort of your discussions of current events. And, you want to make sure that it's not like, when I say this, I don't mean that you're having debates about, gay marriage or debates about, is it good to be gay? That's not what I mean. I mean more including, discussions around policies that are happening, discussions, acknowledging what's going on, not debating people's right to exist or debating people's right to, be happy or to live their life a certain way. That's not what we want to do. We want to more just acknowledge, what's going on in the world as it relates to LGBTQIA+ people. You also can make sure that you're including LGBTQIA+ people in your case examples or in, vignettes that you provide to students. Finally, something that you can do is explicitly state that harassment or disparaging comments towards LGBTQIA+ people will not be tolerated in your classroom. Making sure that students know up front that this is not a place where they can say, disparaging comments about this community, that they can harass students or say negative things or discriminatory remarks. This isn't a place where that will be acceptable. Making sure they know that up front can really help to limit that from happening in the first place. Something else that's important to think about when we think about creating an inclusive classroom is using inclusive language. So, some people don't really like being referred to as like you guys, stuff like that. So, kind of using sort of inclusive terms like students, folks, everyone, y'all, you all, can sort of help to make sure that you're just using more inclusive language that maybe won't be uncomfortable for some in the room. And also, you want to make sure that you are, using students' correct pronouns and correct names. You're using their chosen pronouns, their chosen names, if they have shared those with you. If a student told you, if a student is like, you're doing roll call one day and you're like, oh, William Smith, and he's like, oh, I go by Billy, you'd write it down and call him Billy. So if a student asks you to call them, a name that suits their gender identity better, it's the same kind of thing. If you can call William Billy, you can call your trans student by their chosen name as well. Something that can be helpful to do is, particularly if your school doesn't have policies around like preferred or chosen names and pronouns, is sort of getting chosen names and pronouns from students before you do something like call roll. That way you're not accidentally, putting a student in an uncomfortable or an awkward situation, right? Maybe you pass around a sheet of paper where students can write some things about themselves, like, what they're looking forward to in the class and what year they are, what major they are, or what grade they're in, or what their, favorite thing from their last year's English class was, whatever, get some general info. You also can put information on there about pronouns and chosen versus given names and stuff like that, just to make sure you're, calling everyone by the right name without being, awkward or putting yourself in an awkward or uncomfortable situation. I have a whole video about pronouns and, pronoun use and stuff like that, so I will link that up above. You can check that one out, but I did just want to mention in this video, making sure to use inclusive language and use students' chosen names and pronouns. That's a big step forward in, creating an inclusive classroom. It also can be helpful to introduce yourself with your pronoun, just to sort of normalize the experience for students as well. That can be another big step in creating an inclusive space. Some more like additional classroom climate tips can include things like making sure that you discourage offensive humor from students and that you avoid making humorous remarks yourself that belittle the LGBTQIA+ community. You also can avoid incorporating stereotypes into your case examples. Make sure that course material includes LGBTQIA+ figures and it's not demeaning or stereotypical or prejudiced against LGBTQIA plus people. Make sure that you're providing, you know, accurate, factual information that isn't just based on stereotypes or your own biases. Make sure you're providing, you know, real information. You want to make sure in all senses, right, that you're giving your students good information, factual information. You wouldn't want to be teaching your students, you know, the complete wrong, you know, history concept or the complete wrong way to do this math problem, right? So this is no different. You want to make sure that you are you're providing them with accurate, factual information about the LGBTQIA plus content you're including in your curriculum. Sometimes in the classroom, a student might, you know, make a hateful comment or make a discriminatory comment. And, you know, it can be a very nerve-wracking situation for you as the teacher, right? You know, how should I respond? What should I do? So I wanted to talk a little bit about how to respond to hateful comments in the classroom. Like I said before, an important first step is having you know, established rules that emphasize respect during classroom discussions and that explicitly state that, you know, hateful comments towards LGBTQIA plus people are not going to be tolerated. If a comment does happen, however, it's important to address that comment immediately. Some people might feel like, oh no, like I'll just let it go. If I address it, that'll draw more attention to it and make it, you know, more of a big deal or make it more uncomfortable. But unfortunately, if you choose not to address the comment, it can sometimes send the message that this type of behavior is okay, or that this type of behavior is, you know, to be expected. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to ever send a message that hateful comments are okay, right? So, you know, address the comment immediately. Sort of, you know, name the behavior, state why it's hurtful, express disapproval of the comment, and explain why. You know, why saying something like that isn't okay. And, you know, be sure that you provide any information that you can to dispel myths or stereotypes. You know, maybe someone made a homophobic remark that's deeply rooted in stereotypes. You can provide accurate information about that. You also want to make sure, though, that you avoid belittling the student who made the comment. And that if the comment was directed towards a particular, you know, LGBTQIA plus student, for example, make sure that you check in with that student after class and offer support to that student. Whether you check in with them in person as they're, you know, walking out the door, or you send them an email. You know, make sure you're like, hey, you know, I know that in class today, you know, this person said this, and I know, you know, we addressed it in class. I explained to them that was not to be tolerated. They got their punishment, whatever. But I just wanted to check in with you and see how you were feeling and, you know, make sure you were doing okay after that experience, right? And like I said, you can do this in person, or, you know, if the person, you know, rushes out the door, you can send an email as well if that's something you have access to at your institution. Also, you know, just make yourself available to students to meet with them one-on-one to discuss issues and incidents, whether it's, you know, during office hours or after class or after school. Just make sure you're available for students to discuss things with you if they happen. You know, maybe you don't catch something that happens in class, or something is going on behind the teacher's back and a student, you know, wants to talk to you about it. Make yourself available for stuff like that. Or for a student who maybe makes a remark and they come into you and they have questions, or they want to apologize, or they'd like a little bit more explanation about what's going on, or why what they said was, you know, not okay. Make sure you're around for that. You know, hateful comments, it is a really stressful thing when someone says something that's like, oh no, you know, like, oh no, what do I do? Sometimes it also can be helpful to kind of cut the behavior off before it gets too wild and crazy. But hopefully these tips can help you respond to comments as they do happen, or if they do happen, because they might, right? So hopefully, you know, these tips can help you in creating, you know, a more inclusive classroom experience and responding to, you know, hateful comments as they occur. I also have a video about how to respond when someone comes out to you that could be helpful. You know, if you are a teacher or if you are an instructor, you know, a student might feel comfortable with you and may come out to you. So check out that video if you would like more information or on sort of that type of a topic. But I think this is all I'm going to talk about in today's video, just sort of these general tips about creating an inclusive classroom environment. And I will be sure to link in the description box down below, you know, all of the resources that I use to sort of pull these tips for you so that you can read them in full and get more information. GLSEN has a lot of really great resources for educators about LGBTQIA plus issues as they relate to the classroom and to school environments and institutions as a whole. Lots of awesome research and lots of awesome resources as well. So I will be sure to link some stuff from them down there and link their website so that you can go on there and check things out as well. But yeah, hopefully this was a helpful presentation for you and you like this video. I know it's a little bit more niche than some of my other videos are, but hopefully it was still helpful and people will get something out of it. But let me know down below if you like this video or if there are other topics you'd like to see me talk about, and be sure to check out the description box for more information on what we've talked about today. Thank you all so much for watching this video and for taking the time to learn more about how to create more inclusive environments for your students. They'll really appreciate it for sure. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.